From a technical point of view, it might be hardly more than a bus on rails, but from a historical stand, its significance can't be overstated. The Uerdinger Schienenbus. And its design is a lot more versatile than you think too. Unlike many other railways in Europe, the soon-to-be-named Deutsche Bundesbahn of West Germany was short in monetary outside support after the war, which forced rigorous rationalization measures into place. Attention was especially directed towards branch lines. Most of them were served by pre-standard steam locomotives, which were not only costly to maintain and run, but were by now more often than not far beyond their expected service life. On lines with little traffic, they were only economic, if at all, if goods and passenger trains were combined, which certainly did not help in making them faster or more attractive to passengers. Meanwhile, the competition from the road was continuously gaining strength. Small self-propelled vehicles were needed, and at the time nothing new or revolutionary. The former Deutsche Reichsbahn already gathered plenty of experiences with small rail cars, and it is only due to the war they never reached significant production numbers. It would have been all too easy to come back to them, but at the same time very much out of the question. As proper rail cars, they were simply too expensive at that time, and a rail bus was needed instead. But what even is the difference between a rail car and a rail bus, you may ask? Let's maybe start by saying that every rail bus is a rail car, but only few rail cars are rail buses. Rail car is a very generic term for any self-propelled rail vehicle that carries passengers or cargo, usually used for singular units, but is sometimes also applied to multiple units. And yes, I am aware that many of you Americans out there refer to anything on rails that is not a locomotive as a rail car, so please bear with me here. The majority of rail cars are built to proper railway standards in terms of safety, speed and power. That means they can be freely used and mix generally well with locomotive-hauled trains, but makes them also rather heavy and expensive. And then there are those rail cars that do not adhere to common railway build practices, but are directly derived from road vehicles, railbuses. They are simple to operate, have an incredibly low weight per seat, are therefore very cheap to run, and are also inexpensive to build, as many parts come straight off truck and bus manufacturers' shelves. And apparently incredibly quick to develop too. From first discussions in June 1949, it took only 10 months for the first prototype to be set on rails, and finally in 1952 the first serial vehicles of the VT95 were put into service. Probably a speed record for any German railway company. It goes without saying that a lot of the usual hierarchic structures had to be bypassed to make that possible in the first place. Furthermore, the wagon builder Uerdinger could base the design directly on the pre-war rail buses built for the Lübeck-Büchener Eisenbahn, and the truck and bus manufacturer Büssing just brought its soon-to-be famous underfloor motor into serial production. But the cost-saving and lightweight build also brought with it some major problems. The insufficient braking system was a permanent cause of concern. The single truck motor was just about enough for the bus itself and a single trailer, but would very quickly meet its limits on inclines and was often worked at and beyond its allowed limits, with overheating and damaged motors being a common issue. And the special couplings, truck couplings on the prototypes and simplified Scharfenberg couplings in serial production, meant regular rolling stock couldn't be attached to them anyway. Special adapters had to be used to tow them off. No reason for complaints, however, gave the official speed limit of 90 km per hour. With it, the rail buses were a lot faster than many branch lines would allow for, and only the standard branch line classes could rival or beat this speed. At least on paper. In practice, the rail buses could easily exceed 100 km per hour, and often did, before the retrofitting of the train protection system in Düsseldorf put an end to this delay preventing measure, widely known as speeding. And while the ride comfort could not compete with full-sized rail vehicles, at the time it was deemed good enough, especially when air suspension was introduced with the later builds. And the clean and open interior, with its generous glazing, was a delight to passengers. Except in summer. when these glazed tin cans turned into hothouses with built-in underfloor heating, which however in winter, even combined with the actual heater, had no chance of properly keeping its occupants warm. While the temperature issues were never resolved, some of the other concerns were more pressing. But solving them the proper way would have made the vehicles more expensive, something the Bundesbahn was desperately trying to, but ultimately failed to avoid. Only the addition of magnetic track brakes could resolve the insufficient braking power for good, and to make the buses suitable for steeper lines, while also allowing for multiple trailers, a version with 2 motors was hastily developed and entered serial production in 1955, the VT98, which ended up being about 40% more expensive than the single motor version. But the additional pulling power now made control cars finally viable, enabling proper push and pull operation. And to add to their flexibility, the ends were significantly strengthened to allow for proper buffers and coupling hooks. This way, the rail buses could not only haul regular wagons and coaches, they could also be attached to and hauled by a locomotive-pulled train. In Bavaria, rail buses were in fact coupled to old rack locomotives, which inspired the development of the VT97, a railbus for rack and pinion service, without needing the help of a separate locomotive. Various departmental vehicles based on the railbus or rebuilt from withdrawn vehicles proved even more how flexible and useful the space concept really was. One particularly interesting variety, developed by Uerdinger and offered to the Bundesbahn, but ultimately declined, is a short coupled 3-car unit with proper gangways between the cars, due to the usually short distances traveled by railbus deemed unnecessary. Journeys of up to 6 hours, however, would the railbuses see in Spain, thus making the Renfe the only operator to acquire more than 162 and 3-car units factory new. Only the demonstrator remained in Germany with the private operator Hersfelder Kreisbahn. While not setting any records in terms of speed or comfort, and despite their teething troubles, the railbuses proved to be extraordinarily successful in what they were meant to do, by allowing through the low operational cost many branch lines to remain in service, earning them rightfully the nickname Savior of Branch Lines, alongside other names like Roter Brummer, Insektenmörder, Schwitzkasten, Currywurst or Ferkeltaxe, a name most commonly associated with their East German cousins, but was also used for the Western rail buses. Including those for private and foreign operators, about 1500 were built until 1971, either by Uerdinger themselves or in license by other manufacturers. Even British Railways had 5 of them, long before the Paces were heard of. Including also trailers, control cars and departmental stock directly derived from the Uerdinger railbus, the total number of units ends up being a whopping 3,500. Despite being designed for a service life of just 15 years, many remained in service right until the end of the century, and a few even beyond. By now, modified for proper one-man operation without a guard. But it goes without saying that their story never really ended, as plenty of them can still be seen alive and well at heritage railways today. An equally long-lasting thank you goes to my channel members, including Contrian, Dave Heise, Flip Schwip, Kay Frankly, Lucas Ilskens, Martin Vigican, Steamy Player, and the soulless Redbeard, for helping me to create these models and videos. And if you now want to know how the Bundesbahn rethought their high-end passenger services, have a look at this video. See you there!